So if you sacrifice your family on the altar of earning money, does that make you a good leader?
Mark Bilton is a globally recognized leadership advisor with 20 years of experience as CEO and managing director across 6 companies. One of these being Gloria Jean's Coffees, where he oversaw operations in 40 different countries.
I would like to think that I've hacked leadership and humanized the workplace.
He's the founder of Lead Well, Live Well, where he assists leaders to problem solve, build legacy, and avoid burnout. Mark is a proven catalyst for transformation and a trusted voice in high-impact leadership worldwide.
The leadership game has changed a lot in the last decade or so. We spend more time at work than we do literally doing anything else. And I think if you can create an environment where people want to be a part of it, roll out of Monday morning and go, fantastic. If you do that and create that kind of culture, you're going to do well. A 0.1% improvement in management would give us a 5% increase in productivity. So if you're built as a leader, the best you can be is when
I would like to welcome my friend Mark to the Agency Podcast.
Dane, thanks.
Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here, man.
That's my pleasure.
You're tremendously
My pleasure.
skilled, and you have a deep leadership experience. And I'm really excited to just like fully go down the rabbit hole on exactly what leadership is.
Thanks. Yeah, looking forward to it.
So to dive on in, what is leadership? Is it an art? Is it a science? Or is it a blend of both?
All of the above. There's so much written on leadership. I mean, you'd fill more than a room full of all the books. There's just so much going on, and it's a complex topic. And I think a lot of it is actually experiential as much as the kind of the knowledge, like flying a plane. You can learn how to fly a plane, but can you fly a plane? Not really until you've done it.
Yeah, you can be objective. You can say, well,
Totally.
I've read the books, I've listened to the podcast, I've
Can you
been
do
to a leadership seminar, I'm good.
Yeah. No, it's a lot more complex than that. I think I'm still learning about leadership now, and I've done a lot over the years. But I think in essence, there's an outcome from leadership, like you're trying to achieve something, a purpose or an outcome, and you're able to create that vision, create a cohesive message around that, align a bunch of people to be all running together collaboratively to be able to achieve that, and then create an environment where that can get done well. I think it's probably the essence of it. So good vision, good strategy, creating an environment where people can do well and they want to be a part of what you're doing. I think that's probably the essence of leadership. It's changed a lot though, I think.
How has it changed?
Well, the Industrial Revolution was very much around command and control, so very mechanistic, mechanical, whereas now things are moving so fast that leaders need to be much more influential rather than command and control. So organizations are becoming much more like ecosystems rather than everyone in one building, one person doing the thinking and everyone else doing the doing. They're much more tribal and connected, and you need more transparency and trust. And the leadership game has changed a lot in the last decade or so. Some people are still shouting at people in corridors and trying to get things done. But I think most good leaders recognize that there's a lot more in relationship, human EQ, creating an environment where people can do well.
So if you take me through a short history lesson, like you said there, It was about commanding and it was about being mechanical. If you take me back to the industrial era, like what would have been good leadership back then? Why was it effective? And then if you could maybe give some subject matter as to like an example, and then how has that evolved to today to be more tribalistic, more collaborative by nature, more EQ? Because it does seem like when you go back through the history books, everything was pretty much ruled with an iron glove.
Absolutely.
Versus today's strategic direction is a bit more velvet.
Yeah. I think there's some societal impact on leadership when an industry really first started to happen. Two influences: one's the church and military. So a lot of those are very hierarchical structures.
Well, they were like very much the bedrock of society.
Absolutely.
Led by religion and the military.
Totally. So that was feudal society in a lot of way with kings and serfs. And so that was the reference point for most of the Industrial Revolution. One person owned the capital. Everyone else, they got paid as minimum as possible and just did what they were told. So the military have a really good saying, or maybe it's not a good saying, up here for thinking, down here for doing. because you've got pips and crowns up here, military officers.
yes.
That's for thinking. And down here, if you've got stripes, then that's actually for doing. So just do what you're told.
Interesting.
But I think that's changed a lot, even in that context as well. If you look at special forces and any sort of ground theatre where there's a lot of things happening, decisions have to be made. The same analogy takes place. So everyone thinks it's command and control, but actually there's people doing thinking. The first thing that happens when there's any sort of combat situation is things change a lot. The objectives are agreed on, but the way you get there changes a lot. I think that's a really good metaphor for our approach to business these days. If you've got a very slow-moving market, you can have one person thinking and just telling people what to do, and it kind of works. And obviously, the Industrial Revolution really transformed society, and a huge, big era of that kind of thinking. But as we moved into more of a digital environment, things started to change very fast. And so big, slow organizations that had maybe a 20-year model evolution for an industry was getting shortened to 5, 3 years, 2 years. If you're not reinventing yourself every year, there's something wrong now. And you can't have one person doing that. You need something that's very fluid, very agile, very easy to move. The difference between maybe a big tanker going down the sea and you're trying to turn that takes a lot at the wheel, and then you just got to wait and slowly it'll turn. That's pretty efficient if there's not much in the way. But if there's lots of things going on, there's icebergs, you need to be much more like a shoulder fish where the whole thing can flex.
Right.
And that movement doesn't necessarily come from the front. It can come from anywhere in the organization.
That makes so much sense, because I would imagine in the industrial era, it was shut up, do as you're told, and at the end of 20 years, you might get a gold watch.
Yeah. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
And there's, my grandparents, and my mother was telling me this, which was back in my grandparents' era. You work really hard your whole life for one company, and if you do really well, they'll reward you. And, it seems like the shift into the digital era is a lot more like the Wild West. There's a tremendous amount of activity happening. Everything changes every 5 minutes, and you have to be more nimble, more pivotable, and more agile than ever.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Do you think it's harder to be a leader now in this current climate that we're in than in history?
I think it's a different skill set. It's arguably a rarer skill set. Most people can shout at people, which was kind of the prevailing model, which is slightly unkind, I think, because there was massive changes and lots of productivity gains and a lot of good things happened in society. Things became much more egalitarian over time. And a lot of those big industrial companies actually really looked after people. There's some great shining lights like Guinness, for instance, that actually they basically built whole infrastructures. They were one of the first to do medical doctors and nurses for their people in their organizations and a whole bunch of things. So there were a lot of very good industrial models, but I think the skill set to be able to work in an environment that's changing a lot, where you've got to create this ecosystem. There's no real control. Moving to influence, it's just a whole different game. So you've got to be very comfortable in, I think, who you are, where you're going, trusting people, a lot more empowerment, a lot more collaboration, more transparency, building trust, which I think is one of the most underrated currencies in business. So it's just a different skill set. But if you do that well, then organizations can actually shift very quickly.
Now, when you talk about the military in particular,
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Jocko Willink,
Yep.
and one of his books that I've read probably 9 or 10 times at this point is the dichotomy of leadership.
Yeah.
And he has this concept wherein, for example, the general of the military of said, governing body of whatever branch of the military they're in would say, look, the objective is we want you to take over this compound. Here's the resources. Here's the materials. This size of this operation could be X. But then it would be, handed over to a leadership role. And then that leader would then brief it with their team of experts.
Yep.
And then the leader would inherently listen to their subordinates, and they would throw suggestions. I think we should enter from the river. I think we should enter through the front of the compound. I think we should break in this way. I think we should land with a helicopter, whatever the strategy might be pitched as. But inevitably, it's up to the leader to decide, nope, we're doing this plan.
Yep.
I'll hear you out. But inevitably, the decision rests on their shoulders.
Sure.
And then they have to make sure that the team that are operating the mission are completely and coherently in agreement with, okay, that's the leadership's decision. Let's execute accordingly.
Yeah.
When you're looking at this break of leadership and you have, I guess, the managerial layer and then you have the leadership layer, like, do you see them differently or are they one and the same?
These days, they're pretty much one and the same because organizations are a lot flatter, much more egalitarian, much more grouped around as an ecosystem than too structured.
What do you mean by egalitarian?
Just people, anyone in the organization can have an idea, and if the culture's right, you can make it happen.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Kind of like Kaizen at Toyota.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, constant improvement and ideas. A good idea from anywhere is a good idea. I think that model you're describing is really important because you're managing by or leading by outcomes, not by process. So you're letting the process be dictated by the people who are on the ground doing whatever they're doing, so that when you're getting some transparency and some accountability about an agreed outcome. Okay, I'm going to deliver this by next Tuesday. Great. That's next Tuesday? Yes. What's it going to look like? Great. Fantastic. Awesome. Off you go. And you're letting the people in that particular group or team articulate how they're going to do it, work it out themselves, come up with the best strategy, give them the expertise around the table. And there'll be some sort of leadership in the midst of that as well, who actually has the responsibility for the delivery, who says, okay, I've heard everyone's, yep, great, fantastic, let's do that. And they might adapt as they go, but next Tuesday, that thing needs to be delivered.
Yeah.
So it's leadership by objective, agreed outcomes rather than by process. As a saying, don't do this. Like, why am I doing that? Like, there's a much better way to do it. But no, don't do this. And do this. And, oh, that's fallen over. Do this. So someone else telling you what to do. Most people, if they have a level of expertise and a pulse, know what they're doing in their particular area. Whether it's working in the warehouse or customer service or sales rep or whatever it might be, they're probably in the best position to work out the best way to do what they're being asked to do, particularly if they're told, very transparent about where we're going, what it is we're trying to achieve, an agreed set of outcomes that the whole organization is trying to work their way towards, and they can, oh, this is my piece in that. I can see that.
And how do you correlate that across to an organization? Would you say that the military, the way I guess a modern military organization works and the way a modern company at scale works, would you see them as quite similar or quite different?
I think particularly in the special services area where it's mission critical decisions made on the ground, it's very similar. Americans have got all sorts of issues with thousands of flag officers, and every time they want to do something, they've got to ring up a lawyer, and so it's all got a bit crazy. But if you take that piece out, as far as pure combat on the ground, I come from a military background. Both my father was in the British Army, and my grandfathers were both in the military as well. So I've ruined generations of military service by not joining up. Yeah, my grandfather, talking about the old school. He lied about his age. He used to work on a rubbish truck in Hull in the UK and joined the army as a soldier and then got commissioned in the field. So he became an officer during the war. And then he was in the Dunkirk retreat.
Wow.
Was told to destroy his guns. He had anti-aircraft guns, told to destroy those and jump on the ship, which everyone was doing. He said, righto, sir, and then didn't do it. Reassembled the guns and then shot down a whole lot of aircraft, got a military cross.
Wow.
Yeah. And I read his diaries, which we only discovered about 3 years ago through another part of the family. It was kind of fractured. We finally got his diaries of his story of what he was doing and how he was working with his men, mainly trying to find wine from French cellars and then putting these guns together and shooting down some planes. So it was just a wonderful insight into family history, but also his whole leadership approach was very just kind of one of the boys.
What's your thoughts on company culture from a leadership perspective where you're thrusted into a general manager role? Like how do you grab the reins of that and how do you make sure that the company doesn't go off the rails?
I think the work environment, it can be redemptive. And yet most people, it's Monday, I've got to go to work.
Right.
Or, it's a it's a trial. It's just like a slog. And yet we spend more time at work than we do literally doing anything else. And I think if you can create an environment where people want to be a part of it, roll out of Monday morning and go, fantastic.
Yeah.
Where you're growing people, helping them be the best they can be. They're doing things that they value. They're growing as individuals. That's a wonderful opportunity. And if you do that, which is culture for me, if you do that and create that kind of culture, you're going to do well. Like the commercial stuff, do you have to have those things in place? 100%. But if you get the culture right, it's a lot easier to get a lot of things done, for sure.
If we slingshot forward in your career a little bit to your tenure at Gloria Jean's, and you led across 40 countries and 800 stores, and you had to really have a strong grip on culture and a strong grip on leadership.
Yeah.
Coming into an environment that I understand with Gloria Jean's was in part a turnaround.
Yeah, more than in part, but yes.
I'm trying to be polite here. How would you describe it? And what exactly was your experience? Because what I would like to go down the rabbit hole on here together with you on is what is it that makes good culture and what is it that makes poor culture, and how do you correct that in such potentially an environment where there's a mutiny from the crew around maybe how you lead?
Sure. Yeah, Gloria Jean's was obviously very complex. So a lot of moving parts, a lot of things going on, and a lot of systemic failure all over the organisation. So pretty much anything you lifted the lid and had a look, it's kind of was a bit broken.
Do you have an example of that?
So the international business never made money. We had about 40% of the franchise partners going broke. The ACCC was looking at us for unconscionable conduct. There was a pending class action for the franchise partners. The organisation had more layers than Walmart. Sales were going back at 5%. Done some strange things around the brand. 30 people in marketing, which is that 28 too many? There was just a systemic issues. Apart from that, it was fine. It was obviously a lot of issues.
But when you say systemic, like what exactly do you mean? Like when you looked under the hood, you're like, oh my gosh.
So
like,
culture-wise, if you want to drill down on the culture piece, was
kind of like I guess across the spectrum. From let's zoom out to maybe a business perspective, and then we can zoom into culture.
Okay, so if you're in retail and your sales are going back at 5%, you're dead, because wages go up, rents go up, and if your sales are going backwards, you just dig a hole very, very quickly. So the organisation was really struggling from that perspective. And it was a great organisation, great brand. It had been built out really, really well, and then just got itself into some trouble. It started believing its own press. The culture of coffee consumption had changed a lot, and the organisation didn't flex and embrace that. So it was believing its own press and not recognising the marketplace was changing and not adapting. So, and reactions to that when things get tight in a franchise situation. Franchise partners tend to pay the price for that, and the brand doesn't, as a generalization. So reversing that and looking at how do we create an organization here where the average franchise partner and the average model in an average store in an average town actually functions well is the only sustainable model for something like that. But in the midst of that, all sorts of financial challenges around and legal issues and a whole bunch of other things to deal with. So you have this paradox in leadership sometimes where the real answer that's actually going to fix the business long term or medium term needs to be addressed whilst you're doing the dance and trying to reshape the business to deal with some of the more challenging immediate issues. And a lot of people turn around, they'll just slaughter everything, make it look nice on paper, and then then it falls over. Whereas I've always tried to look at what's the real solution in the midst of this. So do we need to reach some fiscal outcomes? 100% has to be done. But where's the sustainable model? How do we invest in this? So it was we had basically a one-page plan that was very, very transparent across the whole organization. A lot of restructuring from the brand side. And then I engaged with all the franchise partners, particularly in Australia, which was where the main issues were, and did a roadshow and put on my bulletproof underwear, and they arrived with pitchforks and torches, and everyone was very excited, lots of jumping on tables and swearing and carrying on. So, which is, if I was them, I'd be doing the same thing. They've been badly treated. So it was a matter of unpacking that, understanding what their biggest frustrations were, trying to reduce the complexity, make things a lot simpler. So we literally had a one-page plan with 9 things we were doing. That went out to all stakeholders. And so the whole organization was aligned around achieving these things. So within a very short period of time, within 18 months, sales were going ahead at 5%. The average franchise partner was 25% better off. The organization was back into a reasonable level of profitability. The international business was back in profit, and all the legal stuff had gone away. So, and that's 18 months for a big organization. That's hard to do. I couldn't do that all myself, trying to make all those decisions. But what I could be is the catalyst in there to create the vision. An underestimated thing is a sense of hope, because there was a lot of cynicism from the franchise partners that, okay, the new guy's going to fix my world. That's not going to happen. But very transparent with them what we were going to focus on and what we weren't going to do. Like, we just had that debate. Do this, but that you want, not going to happen. But this, we're absolutely going to go after it. And they were better off over a period of time. And I was there for about 3 years, and there was a transaction on the table. So, and the organisation had turned around, someone wanted to buy us. At that stage, the major shareholder dissolved the board and sent the leadership team home to do the transaction, which fell over. 6 months later, they did another transaction, which was an absolute godsend. 163 million sold to Retail Food Group. So it went from potentially zero value, could have easily gone out the door, to $163 million worth of value in 3 years.
And that's an incredible turnaround.
Oh, yeah, it is. Yeah.
In an incredibly short period of time.
For sure.
Now, when you're kind of thrusted into this environment,
yes,
and everyone's looking at you,
yes,
and you have to put on your bulletproof underpants and start dealing with the pitchforks.
I love that though.
what are the top things in your mind of like, okay, like obviously I've got these 9 bullet points. We need more transparency between us and the franchisees. They're being treated poorly. We got to get them back on side. Like, what are the principles or the methods going through your head of like, this is how we're going to course correct the problem child that this business has become?
Yeah. I've been very fortunate that most of the organizations I've run, I had no idea how the industry worked. So I really had to go and ask people, like pretty much made a career out of going into a warehouse, asking the warehouse guys what's going wrong, customer service, and what are we doing wrong? Salespeople, if we fix something, what would it be? The real people doing the real things have the answers, and often leadership and management team might be locked in some special office somewhere and don't talk to the people. Rarely seem to have the answers, particularly ones that have got into trouble. I look at the top as the issue, not the bottom.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Do you find that that's most often the case in big business?
I think if it's gone wrong, the people that get you into trouble are not usually the ones to get you out. Having said that, at Gloria Jean's, there was some great people there, and we a couple of extra leadership in the leadership team but fundamentally the people who weren't able to fix the problem with the right environment and a nice clear vision and some simple things to do and some empowerment actually fixed it. I didn't fix it. The team, they fixed it. I mean, I had lunch and talked to people a bit. That was kind of my role. My youngest daughter, I heard her saying, someone said, "Oh, what does your dad do?" And she goes, "I don't know, but he has lunches and talks to people and they pay them."
That's a great description.
So yeah, it's probably a little more complex than that.
But you were saying, like, what I think is interesting here is you're like, let me sit down and let me talk to the team. And I remember reading Howard Schultz's book. Yeah. So Howard Schultz, the founder and CEO of Starbucks, wrote a fantastic book called Onward. And in this book, he talks about how, there was a period in the business where he'd kind of resigned. He'd allowed the board to kind of take over the whole organization. Yep. And then within a period of like 3 years, the company was on the collapse and on the verge of bankruptcy. And he had to come back and invest about 2 years doing a turnaround. Now, he talked about the same kind of thing. He sat down with the store owners. He sat down with sales. He literally sat and listened.
Absolutely.
And this is something that I've seen in biographies from founders and CEOs and how often do you think it is that business owners aren't just legitimately sitting down and listening to their team?
Yeah, often. There's a kind of an ego thing. I'm the big leader. I've got all the answers. I'm going to save the day. I'll turn up on my horse with my shield and my sword flashing in the sunlight, and I'm going to save the world. It's a leader thing.
I've been that character, and it's a terrible way to lead a company.
It's a terrible, yeah.
It feels good for the ego.
Absolutely.
But it sucks.
Yeah, look, I come into these organizations and I have an idea of what I think is going to work, or some level of clarity, but I'm not going to go and sit at a table and go, here's the 5 things I think we should do to fix the organization, because everyone will just go, yeah, that's a great idea, let's do that. I'd much rather take the time to, so that one-page plan, for instance, is not something I wrote 9 things on a page and said, this is what we're going to do. That was built, it took the top 30 people from all the different parts of the organization, brought them together, and we just unpacked the whole thing. So people own what they helped to create. So that strategic plan was not mine. That
People own what they helped to create.
Absolutely. Like if you've got ownership into the strategic plan, even if you disagree with it, and you've had a chance to put your opinion on the table, you'll have a level of connection to it.
But why is that so important?
Well, you could have the same plan if someone helped build it, understood, okay, where are we going? What are we doing? What should our priorities be? Why is this more important than that? What about this? Here's 27 things. Why are we only doing these 9? If someone has been through that whole process and collaboratively built that, they have a sense of ownership. If it's just dropped on them from a great height, guess what? This is what you're doing. Okay, well, hang on a second. What about this? What about that? You think that's a good idea, but you don't know about this. They haven't had a chance to own it by helping to create it. So I think it's a...
Does that build resentment?
I found that to be true.
Does that create resistance?
I think so. It's the difference between top-down command and control and inclusion and collaboration. The irony for collaboration for me is when you're busy and there's lots of things going on, you've got a burning platform, the last thing you want to do is sit in a room with a couple of people and listen to their ideas. It's the last thing you want to do,
Yeah.
right? And yet, if you take the time to do that, you get a better outcome, because funnily enough, there's other people that have a different perspective. You and I are the smartest guys in the room, always, right? Not necessarily. So
I hope I'm not. I try not to. Yeah.
But I think there's an essence of leaders who we tend to think we've got most of the answers. So I've had to learn to be more collaborative over the years.
I would agree. I've gone the other way. I've tried to rule with an iron fist.
Yeah.
Doesn't work so great. No. Being collaborative is great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's good if you can do the command and control if you're right all the time, and that doesn't happen very often. But I like diverse teams. I like people from all sorts of different backgrounds, different life experiences, different ages, different, everything's different. That's very hard to make that work well because you have to have a safe environment. So a homogenous team will beat a diverse team every day, unless the diverse team is in a safe environment where people are willing to put their perspective on the table. Hang on a second. What about this? What about that? And bring those things together. I'm not talking about as a DEI sort of setup.
No, I know
I'm
what
talking
you're
about
saying. You're saying
meritocracy, but
when you can have a room of different lenses, different perspectives, different experiences.
Totally.
Some people are heart led, some people are logic led. You want to have this difference of input.
Yeah.
Because I've found that, especially when I'm working with an organization, I've done a strategy with as many as 36 people, which is I don't recommend. But it's interesting because I find typically when I'm working with brands, the CEO talks a lot. But when you actually create a safe environment where everyone's like, oh, my opinion matters, you start to get all these different things on the table. And then weirdly enough, the best strategy kind of reveals itself.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's kind of the inherent truth of the collective wisdom in the room. And if you're looking at an issue or an opportunity, if you imagine it as a sort of 3D thing, you've got a bunch of people looking around, everyone has a different perspective on it. So you just get a much more holistic view of that and all the nuances of that opportunity or that issue. But as a leader, you should speak last. Simon Sinek.
Yes. Fantastic.
Yeah. So let everyone else have a crack at it, and then you can suddenly go, oh, actually, those are really good ideas.
Why is it important that the leader should speak last?
Well, if you come in and go, this is the opportunity, I think we should do X, everyone goes, yeah, we'll do that. But if you go, this is what we're facing, what do you think? What do you see? What about from your perspective? What about your discipline? How do you see that? Okay, well, it's, what would be the 3 best things we could do? Split people up into groups, do a little mini strat session, aggregate those things and come up with a conclusion. I mean, ultimately, you're the leader. You have responsibility. You have to make the decision. But often I find a group decision sounds worse, but is actually better.
Why is a group decision better than the leader making all the decisions?
Just that collective. I think it's just the collective wisdom in the room and experience. So I do stretch sessions with anyone from maybe 10 to 40 people in the room. So you can have literally hundreds of years of industry experience in the room.
I never thought of it that way.
Yeah. So I might have
wow
5 minutes or 7 years or whatever in that particular industry. I've got some commercial grey hair, so I kind of get what works. But in the room, there might be 300 years worth of industry-specific experience from different perspectives. And
that's
different
powerful. I
markets,
never thought of it like that.
That's a lot. You put that in a line that's going back into the sort of 17th century, 18th century, 19th century. Like it's when you take that wisdom on a linear, it's huge.
What's the benefit of being ruthlessly transparent across the board? Like to actually come out with the dirty laundry and go, this is what's really going on.
Yeah.
Because I meet a lot of founders and business owners that they try to keep this locked up and hidden away as to not spook, scare, or intimidate their team.
Yeah, you can't do it, right? The only proviso I'd say sometimes, like I've run a small part of an organization in a bigger group where the bigger group was kind of a different culture to what I wanted to do in my little area.
Okay.
And it would just, you get all this rubbish kind of coming at you. And so I would try and protect the team to a certain degree from all the sort of over-compliance and bureaucracy and politics and that seems to grow well in large organizations. So, you can protect your team to a degree, but I think if you're wrestling with something or there's something that's important, people should know about it.
Okay.
People seem to, I can only talk from my experience really on this, people seem to function better when they are respected, valued for their opinion and their input. And I've tried to always treat people the same. So whether you're chairman of the board or whether you're wrapping parcels in a warehouse, I don't care. You have the same value. You're lovely and created, you're unique, and you have your own reason for being, and I should treat you and honour you and respect you regardless. I remember I took over one organisation and the management, so there was a managing director's car park, separate entrance up to the top floor, and there's special locks on the on the top floor. I thought no. So I didn't use that car park. I'd park around the back, and used to have a big HSV V8. So the guys in the warehouse used to love that. We used to have a bit of fun with that. Walk through the warehouse, and then up through the floors, through the sales side, and then up through the administration areas and into the management. Trying to break the culture of connecting with people, having the same conversation with someone in the warehouse as I used to do with one of my leadership team. A little warehouse example. I just walked through the warehouse and there's a bunch of guys wandered in and they got used to it. First time I walked through there, they thought, well, what's going on? Who's going to get fired? Like, what's happening? Is some restructuring going on today? And you just get talking to people. How was your weekend? Or what are you doing? And
everyone's like, yeah, it's like, oh, it's good.
Yeah, and there was a bunch of them. And I said, oh, like, what do you guys need? Is there anything that's frustrating you? Like, is there something we can do to help? And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, is there something that you need that will help you do what you do? And they said, oh, we've been asking for a new set of scales, like a sort of weight scales thing. And we were told no, like a couple of years ago. And I said, will that help you do your job better? He goes, oh yeah, much faster, much quicker. It's easier to use, blah, blah, blah. And I said, what do they cost? He said, oh, it's like $1,000 or something. I said, yeah, go for it. And they went, what do you mean? I said, go buy it. Like, yeah, go and get one. Sounds good. And then they were just absolutely ecstatic that someone had sort of recognized there was an issue. They're closer to it than anyone. Like, no manager's going to know whether they need it or not. Unless they do, that someone will go down there and write a big report and do 5 interviews and then do a cost comparison and they want 3 quotes and just go do it. And they were, I bet every last parcel got wrapped really well that day, but everything went out on the courier, but all the stuff that they'd sort of put off got done. There's something about honouring people, treating them like you would like to be treated if you were in their situation, and just a thing of respect. And it seems to unlock a lot of productivity, a lot of engagement, and people just want to be a part of what's going on.
Yo, my name's Dane Walker and I am disgustingly obsessed with branding. I had to figure out a way to do branding every single day, so I branded myself. Then I started my agency, Rival. And hired a team of branding mavericks hell-bent on creating brands so good that they'll make your competition shit their pants. So here's the thing, You want your brand to go viral, and Rival makes brands go viral. That's why we're offering you a free 30-minute branding session to get an expert's opinion. If you don't believe me, the proof is in the pudding. Here's what clients have to say about Rival.
Rival is trusted by brands like Nutrition Warehouse, Light My Bricks, and Vumi.
So if you want to absolutely smoke the competition and make your brand go viral, hit the link below and book in your free 30-minute branding session.
Now, one thing I understand is that, for example, in the United States, the distinction between leadership and management is kind of well understood and honestly really celebrated and really, I guess to an extent, they get paid disproportionately. So like if you're a great leader in a US company, you'll get paid handsomely.
Yeah.
Within the context of the Australian environment, how do you think that we approach leadership differently to maybe the US? Because it seems like they just have a much better grip on the industry of business than we do.
It's a different ecosystem for sure, particularly around raising finance. It's just that's a whole different world. The sales side of things is seen as a craft. So they value salespeople, and I think it's the same with leadership. So there's an element of American culture that celebrates success, which Australian culture is don't get too big for your boots, mate. Tall poppy. There's a bit of that that goes on. I can say that because I'm a Kiwi, but I choose to live here.
Yeah, I'm not offended, I promise.
Yeah, I have an Australian card as well, so I've kind of got the lot. But so I think there's the cultural aspects just in society around. They have a different approach to success. They value leadership because that comes with that sort of package. They see sales as a craft, and they're much more, I think, aligned to commercial outcomes are a good thing. Whereas Australia, it's like, do we have to go to work because I want to go to the beach and do some surfing?
Okay.
So I think there's a whole bunch of
the fundamental, I guess, the bedrock of our culture is super different.
Yeah. I was at a fellows dinner for the Australian Institute of Company Directors the other night. So I'm a fellow of the institute, therefore part of the problem. And it was great. There's some wonderful people there. And it's rare to sit at a table where there's a whole bunch of people older than me, which is nice. So that was good. But the person who was speaking on productivity, and he has advised governments for a long time. He said that a 0.1% improvement in management in Australia would give us a 5% increase in productivity. It's crazy, like 0.1%, better managers, we would get a 5% increase in productivity. So our productivity rates are very low. So our productivity went down 1.5% last year.
As a nation.
So we don't do things in a hurry. We don't do them particularly well. We've got an economy that you go out west, dig a hole, whatever you find, you ship to China, and the rest of us are making lattes for each other. So there's, it's a lovely place to be.
Why do you think it's on the decline, though?
Part of it is the way they measure it and immigration. So it actually went up during COVID because the types of people came in were investing or rare trades and things, whereas now it's back to more general immigration. It's productivity per capita, GDP, etc. So slightly the way that it's done, but we're not big adopters of technology. We're slow. We're not particularly. All my Australian people are going to get rocks thrown at me after this.
No, they're going to love this. This is important.
Not particularly innovative, I think, which is an opportunity for those that are in this market. Like if you're working hard, you're creating a great environment, you're innovative, and you're adopting technology, and the world is changing with AI and everything that's happening. Go for it. You're going to do well in this environment. Although harder to raise capital, harder to sell in, harder to get people to adopt innovation, if that's what you're selling in. But if you can make it happen, you can do well. Like Atlassian, great example. Cannon Brooks, and fantastic, really, really good. And they're sponsoring the Williams car in the F1 now, so they're going to be a dark horse.
Hey,
so that's my dark horse bet for the F1. But they did a great job. So I met Scott a couple of times because he was involved with YPO for a little while. These are earlier days before they all became multi-billionaires and bought up most of Sydney's waterfront, as you do. But great guys, culture off the charts. Like their ability to engage people, cure people who wanted to work for them. Just the way they articulated culture and the way they've done that, fantastic. Did a great job.
So let's dive into that a little bit here. So what do you look for when you're reviewing an organization's leadership structure, and how do you even audit an organization to optimize leadership?
Yeah. I've had two sorts of experience that. One, coming into an organization and running it. So 6 companies over 20 years. And that was very much like just going in, what have I got? Like, what's here?
You're doing a bit of an audit. You're
Yeah.
like writing down a list of all the things.
A lot of it for me, particularly in the early days, was a bit more intuitive than that. Just wandering around talking to people, talking to customers, talking to salespeople. I never want, because people, you wander into an organization that's in trouble and they go, what are you going to do? And I go, I don't know yet.
That's not what you want to hear.
What? Like, have you had any experience in the industry? No. How did you get this job? I have no idea. But taking the time to listen and understand. So I used to give myself 4 to 6 weeks, which is a long time when everyone's screaming, of connecting with people, understanding, putting little work groups together, getting a whole bunch of sales reps together. Again, what's your biggest frustration? What are your clients telling you? If you could fix one thing and you and me, what would you do? Customer service people are gold because they get all the complaints and all the issues and whatever. I'd even talk to the accountants. I would occasionally talk to CFOs. I always found the best, it's not my skill set, so I always go and find the best CFO I could find and bring them in if the person inside wasn't quite there. Whole different skill set, and so I always tag team with that. So just taking the time to understand what's going on, what's working, what's not working. There's usually some low-hanging fruit so you can make some decisions and get a few quick wins. And then I would get into the other side of the equation, which you talked about. What do the owners want? They want it fixed tomorrow. Great. What does that look like? Like, what do you actually want to do? Do you want to pass it on generation? Are you selling it? Are you like, what do you want? So getting that understanding, which I usually had a reasonably clear idea before I came in. So I had at least some context. Then getting the top 30 odd people in a room and start really unpacking what do we need to look like, what's broken, what's the essential things we need to fix, and getting that agreement on vision, priorities, short list of things, and when we start doing that. Lots of communications of that out to everybody, so everybody knew, lots of town halls. So Gloria Jean's, because it was so big and so much going on, we used to do a town hall every month. We just based, the one metric was retail sales. That was a one metric. So we had all these yachts and winds and explain things in a visual way, but it was this one metric. And every time it went up, everyone would cheer, it was all great fun. And then it went through 0, and it was everyone, opened some champagne. And then, went through to 5%, and everyone was kind of ecstatic. So they could see progress. They could see we were concentrating on things. We weren't doing, there was no secret squirrel. It was very transparent. So shifting culture in that way. Culture's often caught, not taught. So although the values exercise, for me, it's you start being transparent, you start connecting with people, you start asking them and getting feedback, you start putting a broader group in and helping them, letting them construct the first piece of work that needs to be done. It's shifting culture. But hang on, someone's listening to me, someone respects me, someone actually, I've been saying this for 5 years, no one's been listening. This is great. And then, but there's huge amount of change that comes with that. I had the Charles Parsons Group, which was a 100-year-old textile business, and I'd run the New Zealand business and gone well. And that had turned around, and then I got headhunted to run a public company for a while, which was a great experience. I loved that. And then the owner of that company, tragically, who I had a lot of time for, passed away, and they asked me to come back into. And the business has sort of dropped off from there. So I came back into Australia to run the group. So it was 1,000 people, 20 different businesses, 6 different countries, losing private company, so millions, and in a world of hurt. Very loyal, a lot of people been there a long time, very conservative, fourth generation. And so trying to honor the past but embrace the future was kind of the catchphrase we had in that. We need to move. We need to respect those things, but we need to move. So out of that 1,000 people, we had to send 300 home. So on one hand, you're talking about engaging people and creating culture. On the other hand, you're saying, and 300 of you can't play this game. So
how do you manage that? Because if you have 1,000 people,
Yeah.
and you've gone around the company and you're meeting people and you're like,
Yeah.
she's fantastic and her husband's going through maybe cancer, and then
Yeah.
I've had a great conversation and a lunch with him. And how do you adhere to your values while simultaneously still trying to operate a company back into what it needs to do to survive?
For sure. I think if you find that easy, you should probably be doing something else. Like, it's not an easy thing to do. And I'm always very mindful of, impacting a family's life and those
This
things.
might be the breadwinner for
absolutely.
absolutely.
God
knows what situation.
The normal practice on that is, lists on a page, lines through, you're gone. And we had an odd situation where 150 had to go straight away, and 150 I needed for between 6 and 9 months in order to be able to. We were moving buildings, we were rolling 20 companies into 5 product areas, we were opening up in China. There was a massive stuff going on.
You had to float 150 people.
Yeah. Normal corporate practice would be get rid of the first 150, don't tell the second 150, and creep up with them with a white envelope when they've done their thing. I decided to not do that. I still don't know quite why the board agreed on doing this or what I was thinking at the time, but the idea was, let's be very transparent, because it was a very conservative company and no one wanted to say anything, was to basically open up and go, we're losing millions of dollars, we have to make some drastic changes. This is what we want to do in the future. This is what it's all about. We're going to be moving buildings. Your will is going to be painful. It's going to be horrible. It's a wrecking ball until we get out, but this is why we're doing it. So a lot of transparency around why and what. We talked to the 300 people and really tried to do that in the best way possible. They knew before anyone else knew. I had people in all those different jurisdictions all having the right conversations at the right time. There were a lot of warehouse guys because we were moving to China and changing a lot of things. So we had a team who was ringing our competitors going, these are good people. They're great, they're highly productive. We just don't have anything for them. Have you got something? So we really tried to do everything we could around that. Counseling, we were as generous as we could be under the circumstances. It was like a well-to-do family, and they were going to be taking a lot of money off the table by selling buildings and doing a bunch of things. So we were generous as we could be. So the first 150, we just did that. The second 150, we went to them and said, you know what we're doing and why we're doing it. We need you for between 6 and 9 months, depending on the role. This is what the financial ramifications at the end of that will look like for you. So at this point in time, everything will be done. We don't have a role for you, but you get paid. This is your redundancy package. If you stay until the end of this time, we'll give you an additional this as a thank you for your commitment for doing this. If you genuinely find a job between now and then and want to go, I will still pay you your redundancy.
Wow.
And they say, come again? If you find a job, we will still pay you your redundancy.
Wow.
So, and I thought, okay, I've done everything that I possibly can to treat them as I would like to be treated in the circumstances. And the board, in a moment of weakness, went, okay, this mad Kiwi guy, like he seemed to fix the other business. We're gonna have to go with this against our best judgment. I was amazed at the loyalty and the amount of work that those people put in. It surprised me. I get the dynamic. Like, if you're reasonable with people, they respond to that. Most people. I thought I'd tried to go the extra mile with it, but no one's going to go home and go, guess what? Great redundancy day. It was amazing. It was awesome.
Yeah.
And yet people worked so hard. And part of that was loyalty to the business, been around for 100 years and et cetera. And part of it, I think, was, okay, I know why. They're trying to look after me. I do have this option, which not many people took, actually. Most people went to the end, took the extra prize and then disappeared. We actually found some other roles for them internally as well because things have moved. So, but in that whole thing, 300 people out of 1,000, doing all the moving of buildings and rolling all these organizations together. And we got rid of basically all the top-end management. Were all been around for a long time and weren't able to shift into a new environment. So we'd lost a lot of the leadership team as well. Not one legal letter, not one, zero. In all those different jurisdictions and nothing.
That's pretty crazy.
It's crazy. It's wild. So that surprised me. So there's definitely something in that dynamic of treat people well, go the extra mile.
If you had to put a percentage on the amount of people that stuck around, what would that be?
Oh, it was like 95%.
Wow.
Yeah, like and
That's
and some of them were just working crazy to get stuff done. Like just I'm thinking like, why are you doing that? I'm not sure I would be doing that. They're just So that was it was I was going to say an experiment. It wasn't an experiment, but I think it really validated that approach in a very commercial way. So sometimes we think, hang on, it's like dog eat dog out there. I got to screw down suppliers. I got to treat my team mean, pay them as little as possible. But often if we treat people well, go the extra mile, serve those around us, help them be the best that they can be, invest in them, long-term relationships with suppliers, I've always endeavored to build relationship with them. It's not the cheapest all the time, like build relationship, work together. It's always bear dividends. So doing the right thing, this whole nice guys finish last thing. You've got to make tough decisions. You've got to make hard calls on things. But I think if you fundamentally look after those around you, serve those around you, get that alignment across the broader stakeholders. You're talking about boards and fiduciary duty around return to shareholders. That's only part of that equation. And there's been a lot of debate around broadening that out. So there is fiduciary duty for the team and the organisation, its sustainability, safety. There's a whole bunch of other things as well it's not purely financial these days.
I just
broadening
love,
out. Even in people are adopting, which I'm not convinced about, but adopting. Okay, we're in society. What do we as an organisation want to talk about in various different areas? I think if you want to alienate proportions of your staff, that's a great thing to do.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I just like how you're very people-led. You care about doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And you're saying that simultaneously you can, I guess, kind of be ruthlessly commercial in a business at the same time as like really having a heart and caring about people.
Yep.
You can have both at the same time.
Yeah.
And two things I really want to unpack here. One is which, do you see leadership as about solving problems or more about creating meaning? And how do you help leaders shift from being transactionally minded to transformationally minded?
Yep. I'm probably on that journey myself, and it depends on the organisation and where it's at. So if you're hired as a leader to save a company and put it in a particular state, that's your job as a leader. Now, in the midst of that, if you have a sense of purpose, that can be a great motivator. But those things can be short term. Like I was saying, we'll get to go home in 6 months unless we fix the business. How about we do that?
So as a leader,
that's a thing.
Like similar to the mission in the military, it's like your objective is to take that mountain, take over that compound.
Sure.
Nothing gets in the way of that.
So that's transactional.
That's transactional. But the way by which you get there, you can have the creative proclivity to figure that out with your team the way you want to approach that, like you did with the 300 people and what you did with that.
Yeah. Like purpose-driven organizations, people understand the why or the reason for being, absolutely much more sustainable, can be very engaging. Daniel Pink talks about 3 areas if you want to create engagement. One of those is that clear sense of purpose. So people want to be part of something that's bigger than themselves. Like they want to be part of that collective that's doing good. I want to go to Mars, right?
Yeah.
So the second thing is a sense of mastery. So we all want to be good at something. So what are we good at? How do we get very, very good at that? So sense of mastery. So training people, developing them, what's important to them, what do they want to be good at? And the third thing is we all want some control over how we do things. So a sense of empowerment, like I don't want to be told what to do, but we agree on an outcome and then I can just go off and do it. So the empowerment, sense of freedom around that, mastery and sense of purpose. You get those 3 things. Anyone that's listening that's running a small business, doesn't matter if it's small or large, those 3 things are absolutely true. So why are you existing? What are you trying to achieve? developing people, helping them grow, giving them opportunity, investing in them. Even that's just like hanging out with them and helping them, encouraging them, training them, mentoring them, however you want to, coaching, whatever you want to do, and give them some opportunity to exercise their own way of doing things, and they will crawl across broken glass for you.
What's the most common limiting belief that you see holding leaders back from them fully taking agency in their roles?
You can do it all yourself, I think, is the prevailing, because most leaders they have a view of themselves. It's a good thing to have confidence in your ability, but unless you subjugate that to the need to connect with other people, you'll never grow scale. Most of the leaders that I'm working with in Lead Well, Live Well are sort of mid-size, 50 to 100 million, and they've done very well. They've built big businesses. They're very capable, but they know everything that's happening, and they've driven that often by force of personality, and they've just made it happen. I love that. I love that resilience and that capability, and they're smart people. To go from that level to the next level of complexity, you have to have quite a mindset shift from I'm running the business to I'm running the team, and the team is running the business. And some can't do that. They just need to know everything that's going on. And this is a mindset transition, confidence transition. You've got to have people around you that are not only capable, but you trust them, and you create an environment where they trust you. So I think it's quite a big transition. You can't do it all yourself. You're not going to know everything, because you end up working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, burn out, burn people, burn relationship, burn the rest of your life up at a certain scale. And that's different for different people. Some are more capable than others. Some organizations are more inherently complex than others, because I work with services organizations as well as products and importers, online, wholesalers, service companies, architects even. They're a different breed.
Oh yeah, they're a different breed of people. Yeah. Now around when you talk about this transitional period that people have to break through, I've recently and still am going through this transition of the team run the business, and I'm trying to lead the strategic direction of the company.
Yep.
This is a really, really taxing leap for people to make. It's emotionally taxing, it's spiritually taxing, it's physically taxing, because you're trying to essentially create the best possible handover on how you like to do things.
Absolutely.
While simultaneously trying to collaborate and just make sure that when it gets handed over, it doesn't break. If anything, you allow the team to do it better than you.
Yeah.
When it comes to the power of delegation, why is it that so many people struggle with this ability to go from leading and doing it themselves to handing it over to a team to lead for them?
I think there's a perception that no one can do better than I can.
I've been there.
Yeah, like far out. If there was just like 20 of me, we'd take over the world.
That would just be great if I could just clone myself. We've all had that argument.
Just clone and robots and AI will get this thing done. So there is an element, I think there's the human element of being willing to trust people to activate an outcome in a different way to the way that you would do it. We're not perfect. Like, we have a certain perspective, and we're good at some things. Surrounding ourselves with people who are have different skill sets and allowing them to exercise those becomes a really important part of it. So a lot of it's around trust. The other thing, I think there's a big misconception around what does it mean to empower people and delegate, because our immediate reaction to that is it's going to be chaos. I'm not going to see what's going on, and I'm the one that fixes everything around here. So that ability to be able to bring in a level of accountability and transparency on outcomes becomes very, very important. So you're really managing by outcomes rather than by process. So, okay, how long is it going to take you to deliver this marketing thing? What do you need? You've got all the resources. Like, are you happy about that? You can ask them how they're going to do it, which will bring you into all sorts of distress. But really, it doesn't matter how they do it. If the outcome is what you want, why does it matter how they do it? Could there be better ways? Maybe get 2 or 3 of them together and work out a better way to do this. So transparency, accountability, And then Tuesday afternoon, when they've said they're going to deliver it, you're like in their face going, where is it? Show it to me. That's great. Fantastic. Awesome. Yeah, everyone else knows this is going to happen. Can you do the presentation on the thing you're doing? Huge amounts of accountability, huge amounts of responsibility, because that's the flip side of the coin. If you empower people, they need to deliver. Some people can do that, some people can't. So high degrees of accountability, high slow for people who are going to align with not only their capability but their values, because your DNA should be all over this organization. What you value, how you want to do things, should be represented in the organization, and people should have the ability to articulate that. So how would Dane do it is kind of the question.
Okay, and then
so there's a values piece, there's a competence piece, there's accountability and responsibility. It's not chaos. You're not managing by abandonment. You're not just going, where's it all going? The other piece around that, if I may, is the clarity of vision and strategic imperatives. If there's only 9 things you're going after, or 5 things, or 10 things, whatever it might be, everyone's going, well, why am I doing this? I need to be, if that's what they want, then why am I doing that in this way? I should be doing that. So you're getting a focusing of the direction and the resources and where things are going. If they've helped to create it, they'll actually own a chunk of that and want to make it happen and go the extra mile for that. And then you're managing, leading by outcomes rather than by process. And then what do you want to know? Like, is there a particular part of this that you're really worried about? Get hyper transparency on that piece. Like, can you just give me a daily update on what you're doing with this? It's super important to me, and I know I'm freaking out about it. I just need to really know. It's so mission critical. Can you just check in with me on how you're doing? Give us some progress updates.
Yeah.
So you can adjust it around what you're comfortable with, what your skill set is, and then also as an owner, what's your vertical? So what's your genius piece that you still want to do? And that could be completely different to every other organization on the planet. Doesn't matter. So yes, you've got overall some arching stuff that you need to do, but if there's a deep dive piece that you still want to own, why not?
How do you define high performance culture?
Yeah.
And how do you make sure that as you're, I guess, leading these teams, that there's a standard or a caliber by which that they're matching? Because of course, accountability is a big role in that.
Yeah.
But how do you make sure that the team are actually marching in the right direction at the right pace?
Yeah. I think all these things are outcome driven. Like, are you achieving the goals that you're setting yourself and you're getting those things done? Yes. Well, okay, you probably got the right team on board. But you do in an organization, you go through step changes. So you start with a lot of generalists who can do a bunch of different things.
Oh, yeah.
They become more and more specialists, more deeper. And so the way you lead them becomes slightly different as well. And the people that get you from, say, 5 million to 20 million may not be the ones that get you from 20 to 100, or their roles might change.
Okay.
So it does change. I think a high performance team is not necessarily the same people. Some people can grow through that. They can upskill and they can be as fantastic as they were when you hired them to sort of sweep up the warehouse to running the company. Was the guy from Domino's Pizzas? He started as basically just driving a truck and ended up CEO. And
really
did a phenomenal job.
So you went from pizza delivery guy to CEO.
Yeah. It's rare these days, but but you can grow. You can grow people. You've got young rock stars, super capable, and helping them on their way and developing them and growing them. They can serve in different capacities over time. So a high performance team in a $5 million business is going to be different to a high performance team in a multinational. Different skill sets.
I guess one of the final questions here, what's some advice you would give to people in the Australian business scene that are up and coming, that are looking at going, okay, the world's getting more global, things are becoming more digitized. Some of the old ways of thinking aren't really serving the new era of business.
Sure.
So as the culture pivots, as the business dynamic shifts, what's some advice you would give to people up and coming in business that are really trying to get a good run on the board in the Australian market?
Yeah. Oh gosh, where do I start with that? Look, I think there's never been a better environment to be an entrepreneur. When I was of entrepreneurial endeavor age, there was no internet. That's just crazy. And it was like one generation. You can set up a business tomorrow and have a crack at something like tomorrow, and all the infrastructure and everything you need to do that is there and available to do that. So there's never been a better time to be an entrepreneur. There's all sorts of, I think, mythology around entrepreneurship. You know, you're going to open a website and you're going to retire tomorrow because it's all going to go amazingly well. People forget the journey and the grift and the grunt that has to go in to do it. I would get very, very clear on what your point of differentiation is. So really, really understand the market you're going into. You know, what are the crazy people doing in that? What's the disruptive thing happening in that? You don't have to come up with something that is completely unique or a complete innovation. You just need to be 1% better. So you can go into a standard market and be 1% better, be able to define that and communicate it well. People like you guys can help people, you know, do that. So get really drilled down on the product offer, your differentiation, what makes you different, why should people buy your product, and get very singular about that. I see entrepreneurs, it's Tuesday morning, I've got 27 new ideas. I'm going to wander off. Oh, that's a shiny thing. It's a magpie. Oh, look at that. Oh, I should try that. Or someone had a conversation. I need to, turn this upside down. So the perseverance and consistency of going after something, deciding what you're going to go after, and then just really sort of pushing into that, I think is there's a lot of value in that. Consistently turning up, making it better. What's your differentiation point? Good companies know it and can describe it very well. Great companies double down on that all the time. And it gets very, very hard to compete with because they're just getting better and better. It's something they're really, really good at. Connect with people. Don't do it by yourself. Connect with people because a lot of your friends, family will go, you're a nut job. Why would you do that? No one's ever going to do it for you. And entrepreneurs have this incredible ability to overcome that and make it happen anyway. And that sort of bloody-minded mentality of, you know what, I'm gonna do this. Surround yourself with good people that you know, like, and trust, who are very capable and have skill set you don't have. And keep learning. Like if AI is disrupting everyone, every business leader I talk to at the moment, they're all jumping out of windows going, oh, what's going to happen? You've got to embrace what's going to kill you, right? So like, what's the next business model look like? What piece does that have in your world? And like, listen to the podcast, go to the lectures, read the books, understand what's going on, listen to the crazies, and deep dive on things. Get into it. Like, I'm a baby boomer, but I've got all the AI things. I'm trying all the different things. Super, super useful for even my little business, consulting. And then trying to understand what it's going to mean for some of the industries that I'm involved in and some of the people that I'm connected with.
Do you think there's founders and CEOs right now that are more like, man, I worked so hard to get to the position I'm at. Now this AI is going to come fuck everything up. Like,
sure.
What's been the zeitgeist of AI and the discussion at the top of town?
Yeah, absolutely. So I sat in on Microsoft had a private briefing for a whole bunch of business leaders, sat in on that, and I was just looking around the crowd. Everyone's going, "Oh my god!"
Like clutching their chairs, like, "What are we in for?" Yeah.
Exactly, and it's just another reinvention. It's just another thing on the road, and you get the hype bubble. Anyone with a database is suddenly AI, and they're not. But like, where's the real impact going to come? And we don't know, so we have to embrace, learn, keep going. What's the next thing?
Okay. So it's almost like you would say the market is doing a bit of an inhale at the moment. Like we don't quite know how this is going to go.
Yep.
But you're saying that people need to get curious.
Yep.
They need to get on the bleeding edge. They need to start reading the books, listening to the podcast. Like, we're walking into a market where it's inevitable that things are going to change.
Yep.
And we should be working diligently right now to upskill 100%. And learn.
So it will disrupt us all to one degree or another, our business models, socially, how we communicate, what we do, roles. And it's already doing that with... if I was a lawyer, I would be really worried right now. Because if you think about the legal profession, they interrogate a database and interpret it and give the best possible argument. Hello? That can be done outside of that.
Mm.
So what does that mean for a lawyer? Is it a lawyer who works with AI and does some nuance or some creativity on top of that data processing, if you like? But we're never going to have worse AI experience than we have right now.
In order to be the right leader, to lead a company through, I guess, the era that we're in now, like what are the things that are the most important right now if you're trying to lead your company through the next 2 to 5 years and the destruction that AI might leave in the traditional way of thinking?
I think having people in your organization who understand it and giving some people in that enough space to just really understand what's going to disrupt and how it's going to disrupt. So Schultz, that's a great example. Like, what's going to destroy us? If someone's going to set up in opposition, how would we die? And have someone in your organization literally doing that, where they're doubling down on finding all the stories, finding, there's this company in Europe that's doing X and they're just going to be disrupting, etc. So knowing what that next season is going to look like and then being willing to invest in that. It's never an instant, or very rarely, an instant transition. It takes a long time. We still have cinemas. Like, they haven't gone. Like, it's taken a long time for that to happen. But that was the prevailing model. It's got disrupted, but it's still around-ish, a lot smaller. So it doesn't tend to happen super, super quick. I think this AI revolution, though, will have a hype bubble and everyone will go, ultimately, I think it'll disrupt a lot of businesses quite quickly, probably more quickly than the internet did. And the internet's taken over the world in whatever it's been, 30 years.
Right.
Yep.
And then in the mindset of this, where are some places that people can go to truly develop themselves as a leader? YPO is a great place if you're making 250 mil.
Yeah.
What are some other books or places or references or material that you would really suggest people get their hands on?
You could ask that question to ChatGPT and then give you an answer.
There you go, man. Okay, great. But some stuff that you might.
I think there's lots of EO is good for smaller organizations. I think it's like $1 million or something. Revenues. You can join EO, which is they're great. Full of entrepreneurs. Everyone's wrestling the same thing. Connect, share a few war stories, help each other out. They're great. Tech, or what they call themselves, Visage, I think now. I think they're slightly larger again. There's a whole bunch. There's a whole bunch of leadership organizations. I'd really recommend that.
So you believe that people
peer-to-peer connection?
Peer-to-peer, in-person connection is important.
Totally. Yeah. Otherwise, because you talked about it's lonely, tough at the top, lonely tough at the top, crowded at the bottom. But it can be a lonely, challenging position, and so knowing and having conversations with other people who are wrestling with common issues is quite reassuring.
Yeah, there's something cathartic about going, okay, I'm not the only one.
Yeah,
because you can get in your head, and Tony Robbins has this great quote, which is if you're in your head, you're dead.
Yeah.
And I find when I get my head too much, I need to get around to other people. Totally. I need to get them to go, no, you're actually pretty sane. This shit's pretty fucked. Like, this is how I deal with it. Okay, fantastic.
Love it. Just that whole thing of often in a lot of those groups, the peer-to-peer mentoring or the EO type setup, they have a forum similar system. You're actually thinking about what are the most important urgent things that are happening in my life that have happened in the last month and what's coming up. And so you have this sort of time of self-reflection and review on what are the most important things I'm doing? What am I facing? If I was going to talk about one thing, what would it be? And then putting that on the table and then getting some feedback from other people on their experience of wrestling with the same kind of thing. Very valuable because you're kind of clearing your mind, doing a bit of self-curiosity, and then having to articulate that to people. Just that discipline, even if you've got no feedback, can help order those things in your mind.
That makes sense because I think that reflecting on what has been and forecasting what could be, just living in this state of past, present, and future continuously is so important as a leader.
Absolutely.
Because I think if you live too much in the present, you can be blinded by what's coming around the corner. If you live too much in the past, then you're not taking note of what's happening now, what's about to happen.
Yeah.
It's almost like you're trying to fragment your frame of thinking from what has just taken place, what can I learn from that, what's happening right now, what can I influence, and what's around the corner, and how do I prepare?
Yeah. So I think leaders, particularly the larger, once you get larger, it exacerbates this, but should be thinking 70, 80% of the time about what's coming as opposed to what's actually happening. So if you're spending more than 20, 30% of your time fixing stuff or making things happen in the organization, then you need better people, better systems, more transparency, empower people more. once you get to a certain size. Like when you're entrepreneur, you've got 5 people in a room, it's like chaos, right?
You're a
just
Swiss Army
living
knife.
with
You're doing everything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But once you get a little bit of structure, then a big chunk of your time should be thinking about like what's coming, where's the next set of opportunities, AI, how's that really going to disrupt me, et cetera, et cetera. So it's that should be a much larger proportion of your thinking time, consideration time. I know some leaders that they just are by themselves on a Friday, just thinking through stuff.
I think thinking time is important. I try to get it done at 4 a.m. It's kind of rough without the caffeine.
I'm not
kick,
thinking
but-
at 4 o'clock.
No, but like interestingly enough, I think you just got to find time in your business to just sit. I think we're so preoccupied by text messages, Instagrams, DMs, email notifications. Someone's trying to call me. Let me check out this piece of content. Let me listen to this podcast, read this book, or hit the gym. I think I've started to practice just stop,
White space.
sit,
Yeah.
create some white space, and allow like what's beneath the surface
Absolutely.
to percolate, rear its head, and you can kind of deal with it. And I think sometimes I've not had white space because I'm trying to hide from my problems.
Yeah.
But sitting with it is really powerful.
100%. So white space in your day, in your week, in your month, in your year is a good thing. Like a retreat, disappearing for a while, it's good. You're feeling a bit frantic, you've got 1,000 decisions to make, you've got 7 million emails, etc. Get up, go for a walk around the block, come back, sit down. You're much more like to engage your frontal cortex, cool down, chill, and you get some stuff done.
Well said.
And then I think brutality around email and stuff coming in, like managing that, is really, really important. So I'm super relaxed, casual conversations, happy to do whatever. Email, always been brutal. Like in a big organization, don't copy me on anything you don't want me to read, understand, and act on. Like, don't copy me. Otherwise, you end up with 4,000 emails and you're just like, what? Like, where do you start with that? You know all those things that you register for and because you think it's going to be useful one day and you never read?
Yeah.
Delete all those. Unsubscribe from the world. And if you can, touch it once. An email comes in, like delete it, file it, make a decision on it, whatever you need to do. Just once.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't start collecting all the ones you're going to come back to.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you end up with 400 and then you can't find it. And then with this email, and you end up with 1,000 things in your inbox.
I like that. I've been recently doing something where it's like 3 minutes, 3 hours, or 3 days.
Love it. Yeah, that's good.
So when an email comes in, I'm like,
Yeah.
what do I have to deal with in 3 minutes?
Yeah.
What can wait 3 hours? Not a whole day, 3 hours. Or what's a 3 day? 3 day, I would usually ping back.
That's a good framing. I like that, actually.
Yeah, 3 hours, 3 minutes, 3 hours, 3 days. When I get a 3 day email, I'll ping back. Thank you so much. Give me a couple days. I'll get back to you.
Love it.
So they immediately get a ping in the first 3 minutes about the 3 days. The 3 minute thing is just like, do I really want to park this for 3 hours or 3 days? No, let's just deal with it now.
Yep.
So I just find that, yes, unsubscribe to all the bullshit.
Yeah.
Tell your team not to tag you in stuff you don't need to be.
Yep.
But try to get on top of it. And something I've ideated is getting an EA and just getting them to scan all my emails so I don't have to look at them.
Fantastic. Yeah, having someone else dealing with all that stuff is quite useful if you've got the luxury of doing that.
Yeah. It'd be interesting if AI could just do that for me.
Yeah, and batching that sort of thing as well.
Right.
Like if it's a constant flow, it becomes a problem. But if you kind of batch it, go off and do your meetings and whatever, come back, okay, I'm going to spend an hour.
Yeah, I've done that. So every morning I hit it hard.
Yeah.
I give myself 20 minutes. Get through as much of it as I can. At the end of the day, try and get the rest done in 20 minutes.
Yep.
I also have my administrator kind of comb through and just unsubscribe and just delete all the mess. And she just
great.
leaves all the important stuff.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. So a few closing questions here.
Yes.
Number one is, I guess, as someone who's been in YPO, as someone who's led turnarounds, as someone who's mentored many and created phenomenal software and technology and all the rest of it, how do you want to be remembered in the space by which you've built a career?
I would like to think that I've hacked leadership. No leader wants to be hacked, but that's kind of the way that I've sort of phrased it. Hack leadership and humanize the workplace.
Yeah.
Like
I love that. Humanize the workplace.
Yeah. I used that phrase early on when I started, because I've been doing this consulting for about 10 years, almost a decade. And I thought hack leadership and humanize the workplace. And leaders were going, what's the hack, the leadership thing? So not a marketer, right? So, but I think that challenging leaders, particularly around being more mindful of their people, investing in them, doing what I would consider the right thing to do in that environment, make the workplace a place of restoration and growth and challenge and restorative, redemptive place for people. It sounds like a really altruistic thing, but you'll absolutely get a better commercial outcome from that. So I think that understanding, humanizing the workplace, if people want to roll out and be a part of what you're doing, you're going to do well. You're just going to do well. If you're brutal with people, you might get a measure of success, but is that good? Like, is that a worthwhile thing? So I'd like to be remembered for that. And be more mindful of, I've tried to do that in my own areas of spheres of influence and whatever. And I guess with YPO, because I've been able to have a larger platform training people it's been quite extraordinary to sit at the table with all sorts of leaders from everywhere, and investing in them. I've been a bit more mindful of, can I influence that whole leadership for good? Because if you influence a leader, you're changing a lot of people's lives. Like one leader might have 1,000 people or 2,000, like a whole organization. That's a massive multiplication effect. So if I can grow a leader or shift the leader's mindset, that's having a real impact and moving the dial from the dark to the light. Kind of like that sort of stuff gets me out of bed in the morning. So yeah, I'd like to do that. Hack leadership and humanize the workplace.
Have you considered writing a book?
I've written 4 books.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, but not on leadership. So
interesting.
My 4 books are in another whole sphere of influence around faith and work integration. So,
I love that.
Yeah. So it's been a passion of mine. I was a adult convert, and I thought, okay, so if you've had some encounter with God, then maybe that should impact your work. And that wasn't the sort of prevailing view. So I've written some books about encouraging people, if they've had that sort of experience, to work with excellence, work with integrity, serve people around you, and they might take your message a bit more seriously.
Now, what's a quote or a mantra that you've carried with you on your journey that you wish everyone listening to this would could immediately implement into their lives around leadership?
Yeah. I just treat people around you well. Treat people like you'd like to be treated. Just goes a long way. It's such a simple thing, but it actually goes an enormous way. Taking the time to go, okay, this sales rep that maybe not selling as much as they could be selling, what's happening in their world to do that? Like, can we help them and train them? Have they got something else going on? Rather than just going, sell more.
Yeah.
Just take the time to get alongside people, help them be the best that they can be, invest in them. Goes a long way.
And for you personally, what's a door that you need to kick in right now to take your business to the next level?
I think I need to scale influence a bit. So I have a podcast as well. Not getting as many numbers as you, but I've really enjoyed the last
we can help
year.
with that.
Yeah. I was saying we should talk more about that. But I've really enjoyed just getting some interesting leaders on, having an authentic conversation about where they're at. And I've just invited people I know, and some of them have done some great things, heard some great stories, and I'd love to see that grow and have a broader influence on that side.
Well, I think you're exceptional. You're a great conversationalist. And I think that from just sitting here with you today, Mark, like just being able to learn from you, understand how you've been able to implement leadership and how you've done it with a human-led approach is inspiring. And quite a few things for me to reflect on here and how I can improve as a leader. And it's just, you've got a remarkable body of work. You've got an incredible portfolio of having worked with some of the biggest companies out there. And I'm honored to have had you on the podcast. And we would certainly love to invite you back in the future.
Dane, it's been an absolute pleasure. I loved hearing some of your story as well. So thank you so much for inviting me.
Until next time, thank you so much.
Thank you.